Are you sitting comfortably? Simba Hybrid Mattresses sponsor My 5.
With Paddy Power's Wonder Wheel, you get another chance to win every day. Imagine life with another chance. Come on, let's actually imagine it.
Excuse me, my mate fancies you.
He's a bit long, isn't he? No thanks.
Oh, nice one, babe.
Play Paddy's Wonder Wheel today for a guaranteed win. You'll always get another chance with Paddy Power games.
Introducing new Delícia Drench Body Butter, an ultra-rich whipped formula with buckwheaty butter and our Brazilian complex. Dry skin feels revitalized and replenished with moisture with an uplifting and delicious scent. New Delícia Drench Body Butter. Love all your layers. Sol de Janeiro.
Get your straws ready, people. Winning Sips is back this Wednesday with millions of prizes to be won. Fill your cup, try your luck.
That couple we met made 50% less than us with Secret Escapes.
So we didn't have to rent our house out to pay for this trip?
We check over 1 million prices every month to get you our lowest possible prices on luxury hotels. And you won't pay more with our best price guarantee. Start every trip at secretescapes.com.
Delivering unexpected moments. Extraordinary stories, sponsored by Prestige Flowers on Channel 5.
Quickly, my crystal. Damn the thing, it gives me the pip. It's cloudy again.
Penelope Keith is one of the most loved and respected comedy actresses that Britain has ever produced.
That's better.
She was very funny without seeming to be trying to be funny, and that's the great art of comedy.
Her groundbreaking performances highlighted the absurdities of the upper middle classes like never before.
Penny manages to create these slightly eccentric, extraordinary characters, and yet she's never taking the mickey out of the character. She is that character.
70s sitcom The Good Life made her a household name.
She's very good at playing strong women who have a natural authority, who look ready to rule the empire.
The record-breaking To the Manor Born saw her popularity soar even higher.
She played these imperious characters who bully and berate, but was lovable while doing it.
But her massive success in these roles was double-edged.
The other side of having something like The Good Life is that people identify with that so much. They do not see you as an actor, more as that character.
Reaching her full potential was a struggle early on.
At drama school, because I was tall, I was told I would never play any reasonable parts till I was 40.
Now, more than 50 years after her first on-screen performance, we're gathering Penelope's fans, friends and co-stars to mark a career littered with iconic characters.
Give Penny anything and she'll play it.
As we celebrate the work of Penelope Keith, British comedy's grandest dame.
It's hugely fascinating that one talks about these women who are intelligent, strong, bossy, independent. If they were men, they'd be frank and frightfully nice chaps, you know.
Penelope Keith will always be best remembered for two classic characters. Firstly, as The Good Life's sharp-tongued suburban social climber, Margot Ledbetter.
Mr. Bailey, I want to see you in my drawing room at once.
She plays unlikable, but in a playful manner that is very satisfying.
Won't be a minute.
That is correct. You will be 10 seconds.
After her huge success with Margot, Penelope's next triumph was To the Manor Born's haughty Audrey Forbes Hamilton.
If I haven't made a profit by this time next year, I'll pack up and go back to London.
Oh dear, we shall all miss you dreadfully.
Her career is not like anybody else's. And she has created a number of characters that are sort of British iconic creations.
But the less well-known parts of an eclectic career spanning 6 decades have taken in many less familiar avenues.
Had to get that out of my system.
From Penelope not pulling her punches in the 60s era-defining drama The Avengers,
It's here, Mr. Steve.
to racy 70s cinema sex comedy Every Home Should Have One,
In Hamburg, I used to wrestle in mud.
to creating one of the most unsympathetic mainstream sitcom characters of the 1990s.
Graham! Why did you have to go and leave me with your children? I don't want them!
She has that ability to be incredibly real, and you believe everything that she's feeling and saying, and at the same time can be funny.
An audience will only laugh when they feel secure. I don't mean safe, but secure. When they believe you are who you're pretending to be. And then they'll relax and laugh.
It was in April 1975 that this unmistakably sunny opening title sequence heralded the arrival of one of the greatest ever UK sitcoms.
The Good Life worked because of that amazing chemistry between 4 characters.
Good evening, Jerry.
Good evening, Margaret.
Good evening, Barbara. Good evening, Tom.
Good evening, Margot.
It was a real ensemble sitcom with 4 talented performers who could all grab the screen when they wanted to. But they were also very generous and very good co-workers.
Good evening, Margot. Good evening, Jerry.
Good evening, Margaret. Good evening, Jerry.
The series captivated the viewing public. Even Queen Elizabeth counted herself a fan of the show's warm brand of comedy, actually attending the recording of a classic episode at TV Centre.
Miss Penelope Keith.
And it was Margot Ledbetter, as played by Penelope, that especially caught the imagination of the public.
She was so adored as this character who was just outrageous and bossy.
Margot was rude.
I'm so glad you don't live in this house, Tom.
She was a snob.
There is a maggot in English society, and its name is socialism. I do not intend to suffer from it.
And the public loved her for it.
If you so much as sniggers, I'm going straight back indoors.
Everyone was doing impersonations of Margot. That character was a gift.
Penelope Keith was one of my very first impressions, actually. I used to sit in the back of the bus on the way to cricket games or rugby games or wherever it was, and sit there and go, "Oh, Jerry, thank you very much. Oh, we've got the Dooms Pattersons coming round for dinner."
Hello. Jerry Ledbetter here. Now, I was just telephoning to find out whether I could have my car today.
She's the funniest of the 4 characters, because Margot always arrives with a bee in her bonnet.
Oh, Tuesday.
But what do you mean Tuesday?
She played it off with aplomb. I think she was very good at that. She understood that character.
Be quiet. I don't care if the spare parts come from Mars. Go and collect them.
There is a little theme in The Good Life of Margot jumping to conclusions, like she does when Jerry's on the phone to the garage.
A bottleneck in the lube bay. What does that mean in English? We'll say lubrication then.
Margot.
Be quiet, Jerry.
Penelope Keith does things like that, like it was a drum solo or something.
No, that is not good enough. There was a time in this country when a date promised was a date honoured.
She's very good at having sort of solo spots, if you like. Spotlight moments.
Just a moment. Did they or did they not say that the car would be ready today,
No,
Jerry?
I was just telephoning on the off chance.
Really, Jerry? I do wish you'd acquaint me with the facts before getting me involved. Good day to you.
Part of the secret of the show's success right from the start was a genuine feel-good factor, on and off screen.
Margot,
Yes.
I quite like you.
I think we were all sort of in love with each other. It was a wonderful group. You know, going into makeup in the morning, you couldn't wait.
The success of The Good Life meant that each of its 4 stars would land their own solo BBC sitcom as a result. They were all successful, but Penelope's classic portrayal of Audrey Forbes Hamilton in To the Manor Born topped the lot, breaking all records along the way.
In here.
Yes. You should say, would you step this way, please, sir?
Manor Born played to 28 million people. And I kept thinking, what is 28 million? I couldn't, I can conceive of a theatre with how many people there are there. Even that's a bit stunning sometimes. But 28 million, I reckon, was almost every other person.
In here.
No, Ned.
Oh, are you out, ma'am?
No, Ned.
Regardless of any superficial similarities between the characters of Margot and Audrey, Penelope herself was clear about the distinction between them.
I thought those two were especially different, actually, because the thing about Margot, the endearing thing, was, and she owned it up herself, that she had no sense of humour, and Audrey probably had an overabundance of sense of humour.
Down with De Vere.
Oh, isn't that getting a little personal?
Yes, it is. Well done, Marge.
So to me, they were very, very different.
Penelope Keith has been comedy royalty since the 1970s, but away from the spotlight, she's maintained a career-long desire for a quiet life.
She wants to live her life with her husband and her children and her lovely garden.
Which means that she remains one of entertainment's most enigmatic figures.
Penelope Keith is admirably unfashionable in the sense that she regards her private life as private.
Only close friends get to see behind Penelope's public-facing persona, and those loyal to her are careful not to divulge her secrets.
She's deep. She's not a superficial person at all.
Penny is, like all really interesting, clever people, she's very, very complex. She's a combination of so many things.
Don't be confused by the Penelope Keith who played Margot in The Good Life, because that's not Penelope.
The more audacious parts of her personality were first seen in post-war Sussex by her school friends.
Those days, if you were being naughty, it was usually involving chocolate or some sweeties or something like that.
Delivering unexpected moments. Extraordinary stories, sponsored by Prestige Flowers on Channel 5.
Hi Max, you ready to do some chopping? Keep chopping from the right end all the way down to the left. You've got it. Keep pushing down with your knife. Brilliant.
All right. Hiya, Dad.
Life-changing support from childhood to adulthood. Guide dogs.
Oh, Drinks Trolley, bringing in the good stuff. When you slide across the wooden floor, delicious things are all we can think of. Enter the Singleton. Just look at that. Oh my. The Singleton, this will be good.
That couple we met made 50% less than us with Secret Escapes.
So we didn't have to rent our house out to pay for this trip?
We check over 1 million prices every month to get you our lowest possible prices on luxury hotels. And you won't pay more with our best price guarantee. Start every trip at secretescapes.com.
It's time to settle back in. Simba Hybrid Mattresses sponsor My 5.
Delivering unexpected moments. Extraordinary stories, sponsored by Prestige Flowers on Channel 5.
Penelope Keith has starred in some of the biggest and best-loved British comedy shows ever.
You're very manful at times.
And the honours she has amassed during more than 6 decades spent in the public eye include a year spent as High Sheriff of Surrey and a damehood. But the road to comedy immortality began in Sutton, South London, when Penelope Ann Constance Hatfield was born on April the 2nd, 1940.
She came from a fairly solid, prosperous middle-class family. Her father was an officer in the army, and her great-uncle was Jack Gurney Nutting, who was co-owner of a rather well-regarded company that made chassis for high-end cars at the time. And in fact, one of her earliest memories was of sitting in the back of a very grand-looking car that was actually destined to be owned by the King of England.
Penelope Keith doesn't talk an awful lot about her private life, but she is on record saying that her father left when she was about 2, and she grew up with her mother and her stepfather.
She never got on with her stepfather, although she took the name Keith to become Penelope Keith from him. And her mother just kept giving her that reassurance to believe in herself and feel good about herself.
At the age of 6, Penelope's mother made a momentous decision about her education.
She was sent to a Catholic boarding school in Seaford, in East Sussex, and there was some concern, particularly for her mother, with whom she was very close, about how she was going to cope. But actually she enjoyed it at boarding school.
Keeping Up Appearances star Judy Cornwell has fond memories of those school days in the years after World War II.
Penelope and I were at the same convent school. That's when I met Penny, and she was very clever, very friendly, highly intelligent, and warm.
It was at that time that Penelope Keith first caught the performance bug.
But even when it came to casting, even in school days, she couldn't play the lead because she towered over other children. She was rather insecure about her looks, and she shot up in height to eventually 5'10". And she would say that whenever she went anywhere, really, relations, first thing they would say is, "Haven't you grown?" This made her even more self-conscious.
Despite these early insecurities, life in the convent saw the impressionable Penelope weighing up 2 very different career paths.
One evening she was having a bath and she said, "Mummy, when I grow up, I either want to be a nun or an actor." And her mother said, "What if you become a nun? You can't wear pretty clothes." And so she thought for a minute and said, "In that case, when I grow up, I want to be an actor."
But those ambitions were to receive a severe blow when the 17-year-old Penelope had her first taste of how tough her chosen career could be.
The Central School of Speech and Drama turned her down, saying that she was too tall.
At 5'10", they didn't really know what to do with her.
Undeterred and resilient, Penelope would eventually enroll at the Webber Douglas Academy in South Kensington.
It shows her strength of character, that she didn't give in. Whatever height she is, she knew she had talent and ability, so she carried on and the world joined in eventually.
The late 1950s saw Penelope fulfill her childhood dream by taking her first fledgling steps as a professional, honing her skills in repertory theatre companies across England.
Every regional theatre would have its own rep company, and actors would stay there for a year, 2 years or whatever, and play a huge variety of parts.
And that's really where you got the practical day-to-day experience. You would do 1 play a week, play 1 character or 2 characters sometimes a week.
Today, Michael Billington is one of the UK's most respected critics. But just like Penelope Keith, in the early 60s, he was starting a career in the theatre.
I was in Lincoln Rep working as a PR and a director in 1962, and who was in the company? Penelope Keith. My memory of her is she was impish and mischievous and sending herself and everyone else up. She was fun.
Once again, Penelope's height was an issue.
She didn't fit in to the known category of actresses. We're talking particularly at a certain period of time, you know, the 1950s, 1960s, when there were certain expectations, you know, that actors, actresses would be, you know, demure, 5'6" or 7.
She towered over the leading men, And so she was regarded as at best a kind of peripheral character actor.
I suppose the most curious role she played, I co-wrote a pantomime in Christmas 1962, Humpty Dumpty, and Penny Keith played a character called Dame Egg Flip. And it's very interesting, even in those days, she was 21, and we could see there was a dame inside her.
The sad part about her early career is that some of the most interesting things that she did now exist only as stills in the stage or whatever. They've long gone.
Her 60s stage roles may now be lost, and all that remains of her planned big-screen debut in Carry On Doctor is this rare behind-the-scenes photo, after her part was cut from the finished film. But some of her 1960s TV performances have been preserved.
She became a semi-regular in terms of many popular TV shows. One of those actors that most members of the audience didn't know the name, but they fairly rapidly got to know the face.
Her parts at the time included striking cameos in the celebrated fantasy adventure series The Avengers, from a blink and you'd miss it uncredited role as a bride in 1965.
And I hope you both have all the happiness in the world. Good luck.
To her vivid, high-kicking return in full colour 4 years later.
She was kickboxing, and all that sort of which you don't expect from her at all. But of course, give Penny anything and she'll play it.
For an actor who would become closely associated with a particular kind of upper-middle-class Englishness in shows like To the Manor Born.
Good morning, Richard.
Good morning. I trust you have an appointment.
Yes, and if this takes too long, I shall be late for it.
The range of the 60s TV shows that Penelope appeared in is surprising today.
She was in Dixon of Dock Green, the police drama. She was in The Army Game, which was a hugely popular military-based sitcom in the early 60s. She was really going through the full range of drama and sitcoms and period dramas and contemporary plays right the way through the 1960s.
Much of this success was down to skills learned in those early theatre days.
Actors of my generation were trained for the theatre. I mean, television was a nice bonus and the icing on the cake, but that's what we were really trained for, and I suppose that's where we feel most at home and most in command.
It gave her a bit of an edge, really, that she could play anyone in terms of different ages, different backgrounds, different accents.
The end of the 1960s saw Penelope Keith established as a much-respected supporting actor, though by no means a star. But the new decade would see that change, with eye-catching roles on both the big and the small screen.
Penelope's first real break in terms of TV was in 1970, when she was cast in a drama series called Kate, and Penelope played a character called Wenda Padbury, who was an heiress and a very spoilt young woman, very cynical, very fierce, very rude and very outspoken.
Do I detect short temper? Research takes persistence. You must worry them, Kate, like a dog at a bone.
Phyllis Calvert was an agony aunt who would get awfully involved with the people who wrote to her and their problems.
Mrs. Mallender, do come through. I think you're quite right. Sometimes two heads are better than one.
Whereas Penelope Keith, as her slightly snide editor, was just telling her to just write the articles, dear. Just write the articles.
Supposedly, we run a magazine, of which this office is the hub. Supposedly.
Yes.
Ellen, be a dear and discuss it as you leave.
And she was seen by millions every week playing this very unpleasant character.
One newspaper headline claimed that Wenda Padbury had supplanted hair-netted Coronation Street battle axe Ina Sharples as the early 1970s biggest TV hate figure.
Oh, we've got a few minutes. Have a look at my new toy. It's a visual record of my reign. Me being editor.
Even more striking was Penelope's role in a quirky cinema comedy that proved one of the biggest UK box office draws of 1970.
Penelope Keith is a comedy Nazi. In Swinging London, playing a German lesbian, leather-clad biker nanny, au pair, in a Marty Feldman film called Every Home Should Have One.
Mum, I've landed!
It's an astonishing piece of casting, and it's an astonishing piece of writing. By astonishing, I'm being polite.
Mrs. Brown, Lottie von Gelbstein.
The film's female lead was taken by Penelope's old friend from convent school, Judy Cornwell.
You must forgive Richard. He thinks you're from Mars.
No, Hamburg. Oh, I see. It's a joke.
She arrived in black leather, absolutely covered. She was a German, Lottie, and she was going to be my au pair.
Herr Brown, Lottie von Gelbstein.
Yes. That's nice.
I am outlining my work system.
Because he's been having an affair with the previous au pair, his wife books this one as an au pair he would not go near. Well, but the au pair starts to take a shine to the wife.
No, honestly, I don't
Together we can make a new life.
It was utter madness, which is why it was such a popular film. By box office standards, it was the most popular film in London. It was packed out because it was lunacy from beginning to end.
From midday every afternoon, I sleep for 4 hours. That sleep I must have.
Penelope's public profile was growing, but the big break was still eluding her. It wasn't long before she landed the role that would knock another star off his perch.
Dickie was saying, you know, I was presented this series, I had the star billing, and then Penny came along and she went,
Delivering unexpected moments. Extraordinary stories, sponsored by Prestige Flowers on Channel 5.
There can be only one. There's only one king. One goat. One hedgehog. Oh, nice wall, Jim. But there's only one great one. And finally, only one biscuit. The true original. And one person to tell you about it. Me, Trevor McDonald.
Actually, it's Sir Trevor McDonald. And I'll take it from here.
McVitie's. True originals.
Are you sitting comfortably? Simba Hybrid Mattresses. Sponsor My 5.
Delivering unexpected moments. Extraordinary stories, sponsored by Prestige Flowers on Channel 5.
The mid-1970s saw Penelope Keith in the theatre once more, playing in one of London's foremost off-West End venues.
Penny Keith did a lot of work at Greenwich in the early 70s, and it was at Greenwich Theatre in 1974, she did the play that I think influenced her career for the rest of her life. And that was The Norman Conquests by Alan Ayckbourn.
Penelope played the outspoken Sarah, a role she later reprised in this faithful and highly acclaimed TV adaptation.
Deceitful little whore! Get upstairs, get up to bed this minute. Just who do you think you're talking? Get upstairs, go on, get upstairs.
The part played to Penelope's strengths and included character traits that would repeatedly feature in her most famous roles.
Penelope Keith was brilliant because she played Sarah, the hostess, as a rather bossy, domineering woman.
I'm appalled at you, I really am.
Jealous.
Don't be disgusting.
She was very good at conveying domesticity, order, organisation, but underneath there was something else raging away.
If that isn't enough, planning to sneak off with her for some sordid weekend.
There is nothing sordid about East Grinstead.
Joining Penelope in the cast of the Greenwich production was fellow actress Felicity Kendall.
Penny and I were very much theatre actresses that loved being in the theatre. We would get in early in order to go into Penny's dressing room while she made up, and we would all sit on couches and chat before the half hour when we would then go and make up.
and she was instantly impressed by Penelope's charisma and leadership qualities, both on and off stage.
Certainly in the Norman Conquests, she was always the leader of the company. And then roll on a year afterwards, she was the same kind of glue to making The Good Life.
At the same time that the Norman Conquests was running in Greenwich, writing duo John Esmond and Bob Larby were planning a new sitcom.
The Good Life was conceived as a vehicle for Richard Briers. The BBC actively said, we want a sitcom for Richard Briers to be in.
The premise was an idealistic suburban couple trying to live self-sufficiently off the land, and the impact this would have on their snobbish neighbours.
They had no other cast in mind, but they knew they had 3 other characters.
The show's intended star became involved in the casting process.
I got a little call from the stage door saying, Mr. Briers is in, could you come? He wants to come round to say hi. And he said, I've got a little script, and it's for the BBC, but it's a little series that won't do well. Darling, it won't do well. It's off the wall, it's a silly idea, but I'm going to do it. Would you just read it and maybe think of the wife? So then Richard came and saw the show. Remember, we were in Norman Conquests, both of us, and he said, Penny, got to have Penny.
Richard Briers wasn't the only one to be impressed by Penelope Keith around this time.
Both the writers, Esmond and Larby, and also the producer, John Howard Davis, and the BBC's head of comedy at the time, Jimmy Gilbert, were all trying to think, who can we get to play Margot? And John Howard Davis took Jimmy Gilbert to see the Norman Conquests, completely independently, so the story goes. Esmond and Larby were sitting in their respective homes, both watching a commercial for Benson and Hedges cigarettes.
At a time when TV tobacco advertising was still allowed, this was one of several commercials promoting the brand as an upmarket product.
Oh, Benson and Hedges. They said, well, we've seen this woman called Penelope Keith. And John Howard Davis and Jimmy Gilbert's eyebrows went up, and they said, well, we've got someone called Penelope Keith. So Jimmy Gilbert got up, went and got the Actors Directory spotlight, opened it up where the picture was, and said, is that your Penelope Keith? And they said, yes. So independently, both groups had arrived at the idea she was right for Margot.
Though it would later be hailed a classic, The Good Life's first outing in 1975 received only modest viewing figures. And Penelope's low-key first appearance as Margot gave no clue as to how popular the character would become.
What is it? What's going on?
It's the goods. They're dancing in their goldfish pond.
She is heard off-screen as a voice shouting from the bedroom, but she does not actually appear in it.
Why?
I hadn't thought of that. Why?
Celebrating!
This has led some people to think that her role was written up after it was established that she was a great turn.
What's he saying?
Look, if you're so damned interested, Margot, why don't you get out of bed yourself and have a look?
Bob Larby always said that's not true. It was always meant to be a four-hander. And it was just an accident of structure that she wasn't in the first episode.
Don't you ever say damn to me in the future, Jerry. Thank you very much.
Two little things from the writers of The Good Life, which give you some little glimpse into how they thought. Bob Larby said that Tom was a thorn which Margot occasionally sat on.
I'm sick of it. And if you are set on playing the red-nosed comedian for the rest of your life, I suggest you find yourself another stooge.
But Margot, you're the best in the business.
Oh, shut up!
John Esmond said, and this I think is dynamite, because if you watch Paul Eddington and Penelope Keith playing this couple, John Esmond said, I think their marriage was a sort of quiet war.
You thought it was a little early to start boozing, Jerry?
Oh, right. Well, I'll have yours.
Her relationship with Paul Eddington was just perfect, wasn't it?
Very good.
Because he was so under her thumb.
Door, please, Jerry.
She was awful to Jerry. But when you watched it, you knew that underneath there was this incredible bond.
Come on, you're a mess.
See here, Tom, if anyone's going to call Jerry a mess in this house, it will be me.
During the first series, the show's deft writing and virtuoso performances saw viewing figures soar. While it had been intended as a star vehicle for Richard Briers, it soon became clear that the viewing public had other ideas.
Dickie was saying, I was presented this series, I had the star billing, and then Penny came along and she went,
Penelope Keith had proved the doubters wrong and become a household name. Her fans assume she must be just like Margot off camera, but her friends are always keen to dispel this misconception.
That's not Penelope. That's a character which she inhabited amazingly well. If you meet her socially, you would be, I think, impressed how warm and soft she is.
As a person, of course, she's just great fun. And as an actress, she's great fun to work with. And I've been lucky enough to do it a number of times.
One aspect of the character far removed from Penelope's own was Margot's reluctance to get her hands dirty in the garden.
Funnily enough, during The Good Life, with Tom and Barbara being the great self-sufficient characters,
Well, if that's the best you can do, we'll be here till Christmas.
the person who really had the green fingers amongst the four of them was Penelope Keith.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. Goodbye.
She was an amazing gardener, I think, from the beginning. But that's Penny. She would know the name of everything.
She's the Monty Don of thespians.
She would work out exactly how you had to cherish this particular plant, and it would flourish, because that's very much her thing. It's that part of her that's like, like a Mother Nature creature.
The Good Life ran from 1975 to 1978. And while its middle-class setting made it, in many ways, the archetypal, comfortable mainstream sitcom, it did on occasion break boundaries, as in one episode, where the original script ended with Tom and Jerry getting drunk together.
We were doing the first day of rehearsal, and the boys were doing their thing. And I thought, I rather like playing drunk. And, there's the wine. Why are these guys getting all the laughs? This is not any good. And I said, Penny, we should get drunk. We should get drunk. John Howard Davis said, well, that we have to get by the BBC. And goodness me, if they came back, no, we do not want these angels of the good life, females, getting drunk. And Penny and I think, put our foot down and said, look, we really want to get drunk.
Jerry, don't be ridiculous.
While Barbara was fending off a tipsy Jerry's amorous attentions, Margot, after a few drinks, gave the show's writers the opportunity to explore another side to the character.
Jimmy!
Please tell me why it's funny.
When she's drunk, you start to see what a sympathetic sort of character she is.
Please.
And in fact, in that episode, she says drunkenly, I'm not a complete woman. I don't have a sense of humour.
I never understood the jokes, you see, so I became the butt of them. I've been the butt ever since.
I think the wonderful moments with Margot are where everybody else gets the joke and she doesn't get the joke.
I mean, Margot, whatever anybody says, you are funny.
She would love to laugh, but she can't, and there's a little bit of vulnerability.
Do you know what they used to call me at school?
Margot Ledbetter.
No, I wasn't married then. They used to call me starchy.
She can break your heart. She doesn't flag it up, but when she drops the veneer, she can show you a little flash of vulnerability. Can break your heart.
It was a term of ridicule. Starchy Sturgis, they used to call me.
In 1977, Penelope Keith would receive the ultimate 70s showbiz accolade, the chance to take the main guest spot in the era's must-see Christmas entertainment show.
The Morecambe Wise Christmas Show had become the Christmas event, and at the time The Good Life was the top-rating sitcom. Margot's the breakout from The Good Life.
Here she is, that star of television, your friend of mine, Miss Penelope Keith!
Penelope Keith ends up on the Morecambe and Wise show, but a definitely Margot-flavoured Penelope Keith.
Penelope, I must say, it is a unique honour.
Well, I'd rather you didn't kiss my hand. It's frightfully unhygienic.
Already just visually, she towers over them. Not just the visual, that then she must also tower over them as a human being. Also because she speaks with such power.
Oh, can I introduce you to this?
Oh, I know who he is.
Yes.
How are you, Derek?
The glory of that appearance is that it subverts most of the rules of a Morecambe and Wise guest appearance, because she misremembers the names. She's in charge.
The perfectly pitched script from Eric and Ernie's genius writer Eddie Braben saw Penelope encouraged to look down on her comedy hosts, rather like Margot talking to her gardener.
You see, I couldn't understand what slapping Derek's face had to do with the play.
No.
My name is not Derek. My name is Eric.
Oh, I am sorry, Mr. Moron. You see, all I said...
It's always good to see people enjoying themselves, and Penny on the Morecambe and Wise show was quite clearly having a good time. But at the same time, she was doing her best to serve the stuff she was being asked to do. And so she wasn't, as it were, winking to the audience, oh, isn't this funny?
The show's climax was a Hollywood-style big staircase moment.
I adored her on Morecambe and Wise. Penny coming down that staircase. And the turban, it's very Margot-esque.
And the guest star had her comeuppance in an ingenious comic twist.
Eric and Ernie didn't quite tell Penelope Keith how unfinished the staircase was going to be. Oh no, there would be a few stairs missing, but actually it was quite high off the ground.
I can't get down there in this dress.
Well, do something with the dress, love.
Well,
You know, do
it's
something
been
with the...
specially made.
Yes, I realise.
Climbing off the scaffolding, you know, a dress going up. Lovely, again, the indignity of it, that debunking any sense of command that Penelope Keith might have.
Can you get that leg?
Yes.
Down.
I'll hold on to anything that...
Yes.
They let the moment stretch. That bit went on for a few minutes, and it gets funnier and funnier because it's more and more awkward.
This one.
You can actually see she's laughing so much she has to turn her head away because she's breaking up over it.
Don't worry. There we are.
It's very noticeable in that they can't look at each other. And I mean, are you surprised, you know, being in that situation? This is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Penelope had become one of the nation's biggest stars.
Had enough? Yes, I have. I'm going home. Thank you very much.
But the big question was, after her brilliant comic creation as Margot, could lightning strike twice?
There's not that many actors or actresses, they say, right, we now need to build a show around that kind of character that you have created.
Delivering unexpected moments. Extraordinary stories, sponsored by Prestige Flowers on Channel 5.
There can be only one. There's only one king. One goat. One hedgehog. Oh, nice wall, Jill. But there's only one great one. And finally, only one biscuit. The true original. And one person to tell you about it. Me, Trevor McDonald.
Actually, it's Sir Trevor McDonald, and I'll take it from here.
McVitie's. True originals.
Are you sitting comfortably? Simba Hybrid Mattresses sponsor My 5.
Delivering unexpected moments. Extraordinary stories, sponsored by Prestige Flowers on Channel 5.
of 1977 saw Penelope Keith at the top of the entertainment world.
For the best light entertainment performance in BBC TV's The Good Life, Penelope Keith.
As her Christmas Day prime-time antics with Eric and Ernie were followed the next day with Margot and the rest of the Good Life cast having homespun seasonal fun.
Come on, Margot, get your hat on.
This is the Daily Mirror.
In a Boxing Day special intended to be the final episode and packed with classic Margot moments.
The ooh-ah bird is so called because it lays square eggs. I don't understand.
But even at this high point of her career, Penelope was already expressing concern that the success of Margot might be double-edged.
After 2 or 3 series of The Good Life, Penelope Keith is on record in interviews saying that she's getting a bit frustrated with the idea that people think this is the only performance she's capable of. In one interview, she says, "I did once play a lovely Cockney whore called Molly."
1978 saw Penelope looking forward to life after Margot, but she was persuaded to play the role one last time at the special request of one of The Good Life's biggest fans.
The Queen was asked by the BBC, is there anything she would like to see being filmed? And she said, yes, The Good Life, which was apparently her favourite comedy.
And here comes Her Majesty the Queen and His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh.
The problem was that The Good Life had finished. So Esmond and Larby were called and said, could you write us one more episode?
And the Queen and the royal party go to the special royal box in the centre of the studio, especially constructed for this occasion.
The final farewell to Margot. With the royal seal of approval, saw the series bow out at the top. And it wasn't the only big change that occurred in Penelope's life in 1978, as that was the year that the actress wrong-footed everyone, with developments in her famously private personal life that no one saw coming.
She married a former detective, Rodney Timpson.
He's a policeman from up north, not posh.
They met when she was in a play, and Rodney Timpson was attached to looking after the royal family. And they had a union that was much questioned in the press, but it went on to prove very stable and very happy.
10 years after her marriage to Rodney, the pair would adopt 2 boys who were brothers. Penelope has remained typically private on the circumstances of their adoption and has never spoken about her sons in public.
When she adopted 2 children, I think she was very protective of them in terms of keeping them away from the public eye without any prying eyes or pressure coming from the media. She did keep it very separate and very private, just because that's how she likes her life to be.
I think she has been a few different things, you know, from mayor to actress to wife to mother.
She's someone who is, I think, keen to be like her own mother, who was very protective of her, quite often during troubled times when they were a single-parent family.
With Penelope Keith at the height of her popularity, she was not short of offers to capitalise on the success of The Good Life.
It was perhaps inevitable that she tended to get script after script sent to her with a character who seemed eerily like Margot Ledbetter.
It's very frustrating for actors that they get pigeonholed. It's really tough when the powers that be see you in a particular way and the audience desire it because you are very good at it.
Be careful what you wish for, because if you become successful playing a particular part, unfortunately, people want to see that again and again and again in various manifestations.
There's not that many actors or actresses who are so good at a certain character that they say, right, we now need to build a character, build a show, build a series around that kind of character that you've created.
One script that caught Penelope's eye as a way of following Margot arrived from a young writer called Peter Spence, then best known for comedy sketches.
When she got the script for To the Manor Born, it was a radio series. And they did a radio pilot of it. But she took the recording to John Howard Davis and said, this should be television as well. And originally it was going to be Radio 4 and then they were going to do a TV version, but they thought, no, forget it, go straight to television. So they did the television series, and the Radio 4 series was sidelined.
Your husband, pneumonia, I understand.
Double pneumonia. We Forbes Hamiltons do nothing by heart.
If you look at them, you would think that Audrey Forbes Hamilton was an obvious successor to Margot Ledbetter. They're not really at all.
So, Grantley, you're mad.
The creditors are insisting on it.
Her character in Manor Born is not the same as Margot, but it has the same forceful quality.
Have they no sense of history? We've been here through wars, plagues, floods, famine, and Labour governments.
She has to sell the family home, and she lives in a lodge on the grounds, and the Aravist food tycoon moves into the big hall.
Mr. De Vere, if you'll be good enough to sign the memorandum of contract and then pay the deposit.
Later.
Deposit?
Yes. I've just bought Grantley. I'm settling for a quieter life, and this will make an excellent business headquarters.
The lovely thing about Audrey Forbes Hamilton is that she's quite a lonely person, and she doesn't want to be lonely. And in order to pull that off, you have to invest that performance with a lot of warmth, which Penelope Keith does, but she has this kind of steeliness about her warmth as well.
Richard De Vere. Can you see that man as Lord of the Manor of Grantley?
Oh, yes, as a matter of fact, I can.
Now, don't you be beguiled by that smooth tongue and those rugged good looks.
At least you admit he was good-looking.
I admit nothing.
She's actually more human in that role, and I think we're totally eclipsed by the will they, won't they romance.
That really made an extra dimension for the show.
I won't say goodbye. Just au revoir.
Golly, what a man.
Yes, isn't he?
Peter Bowles and Penelope Keith, that was a marriage made in heaven. Peter Bowles had a kind of smoothness, didn't he? Whereas Penelope Keith is all sort of bustling rage and controlled ferocity. I thought they were lovely together.
I've got to see Mr. De Vere. Is he in?
Are you in? Of course, send her in.
I'm not a parcel.
Well, what a lovely surprise. Chair?
So it is.
What was brilliant about that, I thought, was the way their initial hostility melts. You know how it's going to end, don't you? You know they're going to end up in each other's arms.
I'm fed up to the back teeth with the way you keep rushing over here with some little quibble about the way I'm running this estate. I know for a fact that you have no real quarrel with the way I'm doing it, so why do you keep finding fault?
I was once given a very good piece of advice about drama in general, is that the audience should know something that the characters don't know.
I'll tell you why. Firstly, because you want to prove to everybody that you're still Dame High and Mighty around here, and secondly, because you rather enjoy coming over here to see me.
And To the Manor Born, we all knew that they were going to fall in love, and that they were in love, and that they fancied each other, and they didn't know it.
Audrey, what would you say if I told you I was thinking of chucking the business?
Oh. I think I'd say something like, why didn't you come back here and marry me?
You see, what was that last bit?
Marry me.
Ladies and gentlemen, the bride and groom.
The loyal weekly audience had often topped 20 million viewers. Famously, they were rewarded with the happy ending they had all been hoping for.
It ended up being so popular that it was the most watched entertainment show of the 1970s.
In just 6 years, Penelope Keith had created two of the most rounded, recognisable and popular characters in sitcom history. And the next 2 decades would see her set out to prove that she could do much more than just play tall, bossy and posh.
Penelope Keith has a much greater range, in a way, than the typecasting of television particularly has allowed her.
The period of her career following To the Manor Born would see Penelope play against type, explore edgier subject matter, and repeatedly surprise comedy fans. And no more so than in her first TV role post-Audrey as 40-something building firm boss Helen Walker. Her co-star in his early 20s at the time was future Emmerdale regular Christopher Villiers.
I did a television series with Penelope Keith called Sweet 16. It was after To the Manor Born, and it was like kind of way before its time and kind of revolutionary. She was the boss of the building company.
Desirable building plot. Yes, very sexy.
And I was cast as the young architect who was designing these houses.
Well, do we buy it?
Why not? I can turn this into the house of some poor sucker's dreams.
Helen Walker had many traits reminiscent of Penelope's more famous earlier roles.
Mrs. Walker, why are you so rude to me?
I'm not sure.
This was a strong and successful woman.
Shall we say 90?
Oh, no, dear, don't let's say that. Let's say 85.
Or even 87 and a half?
Or even 85.
But with Sweet 16, there was a twist in the tale.
I'm going to have a baby.
What do you want a baby for?
I don't. I mean, I didn't. Now I do.
That's about as clear as one of your memos. Don't, didn't, and do.
I won't be asking you to marry me. No.
Oh, well, that's a great relief. I thought it was about to be your next...
The heart of the series was the fact that we were having a relationship, a full-on sexual relationship. So you've got Penelope Keith, one of the most famous television actors in the world, and she's 16 years older than me, hence the title Sweet 16.
Whew. I'm 24. Well, 25, really.
Too much to lose.
Yeah?
I'm 41. I lost it a long time ago.
I remember doing a TV Good Morning Britain interview, and they said, kissing Penelope Keith is a bit like kissing the Queen Mother. And I went, how do you answer that one? And I said, I've never kissed the Queen Mother. But, kissing Penny was damn fine.
Don't give it another thought. I only want you for your money.
I think definitely Sweet 16 was ahead of its time. I think it was probably... Audiences really weren't ready to see Penelope Keith kissing a younger man.
Sweet 16 failed to win over viewers like Penelope's earlier big hits had done, running for just 6 episodes. But a change of TV channel would see a new challenge and an unexpected reunion for Penelope.
ITV was cheating and saying we can get those two back on screen together.
Delivering unexpected moments. Extraordinary stories, sponsored by Prestige Flowers on Channel 5.
Are you sitting comfortably? Simba Hybrid Mattresses sponsor My 5.
Delivering unexpected moments. Extraordinary stories, sponsored by Prestige Flowers on Channel 5.
While the difficulty of breaking free from TV typecasting remained a frustration, Penelope Keith's theatre work during the 80s and beyond gave her a welcome chance to play more varied roles.
She would always go back to the theatre because she could stretch herself better and more consistently, because that's where the meteor roles were. She was Mrs. Malaprop, she was Lady Bracknell, she was Madame Arcati.
It was the case that made me famous, Mr. Condamine. It was what you might describe in theatrical parlance as my first smash hit. I had letters from all over the world about it, especially India.
She was all of these kinds of classic roles in which she could be a dominant central figure, and it was where she could still shine.
1984 saw TV audiences able to enjoy one of Penelope's much heralded theatre roles as over-the-top former actress Judith Bliss in Noel Coward's classic 1920s farce, Hay Fever.
You're a fool. A blind, pitiable fool. You think because you have bought my body, that you have bought my soul. You must say that's dramatic.
It is the most
And viewers were excited by the way that the production memorably reunited Penelope with her former screen husband.
Forgive me for interrupting.
Are there any chocolates in the house?
No, David.
Michael Cochrane, who played Sandy in Hay Fever, recalls how the rematch was a thrill for the rest of the cast too.
Penny's husband in Hay Fever was the delightful Paul Eddington, and it was just wonderful to be able to watch it, because they just sparked off each other with such ease.
This is a very unpleasant situation, David.
Horrible.
We better talk it all over.
I shall do nothing of the sort.
Please don't be difficult.
They both just played it to perfection.
This was bound to happen, sooner or later. It always does to everybody. The only thing is to keep calm.
I am, perfectly.
There is such a thing as being too calm.
Sorry, dear.
While the range of theatre parts available to her was always welcome, Penelope continued her attempts to break away from the bossy and posh characters with which she had made her name. And her next move would involve a change of scene when a key mentor throughout her career landed a new job.
I think that there's one figure throughout Penelope Keith's career on television who's vital to it. Pretty much all of Penelope Keith's sitcom work was either produced, directed, or executive produced by John Howard Davis.
And then when he went over to commercial TV, he lured her over and started to mastermind her sitcom career on ITV.
1986 saw Penelope on a new channel, hoping that another crack at a strong professional woman would strike more of a chord with audiences than Sweet 16 had done at the BBC. Quintessentially 80s sitcom Executive Stress saw her play Caroline Fairchild, returning to a high-powered job after raising a family, but unable to reveal that her husband works at the same firm.
Executive Stress was quite an interesting sitcom in which she played an important figure in publishing.
I honestly believe that in Robin Urquhart's book, we have a potential classic.
Well, quite frankly, I couldn't get past the first chapter.
Well, you're just a salesman. You're not expected to read it.
She was originally cast opposite Geoffrey Palmer as her husband, and that worked very well. They had an interesting rapport.
It seems, Edgar, that if we're to keep our sales and marketing director happy, we're going to have to specialize in pop-up picture books.
I'm not prepared to accept cheap remarks like that, especially from someone who's been put out to pasture for the last 20 years.
But he dropped out after the first series.
The show was popular enough to survive the departure of a key cast member, but the choice of replacement as Penelope's husband would surprise many.
Geoffrey Palmer left, and for the subsequent series, her husband was played by Peter Bowles, which is now Penelope Keith and Peter Bowles playing another married couple.
I am furious. I don't want rumours like this going round about me. We may be married, but we are not having an affair.
Yes, all right.
Had Executive Stress been on the BBC, I don't think that casting would have happened.
I think we make a smashing team.
But I think ITV was cheating and saying we can get those two back on screen together.
No, darling, not tonight. I'm not in the...
Would it help if we pretended we were having an affair? Oh!
Executive Stress ran for 2 more series after Peter Bowles joined the cast. And with the support of John Howard Davies, Penelope's next attempt to break the TV typecasting mould would see her again defy expectations. The early 1990s saw her in a parliamentary setting that surprised many, as the performer of True Blue Tories Margot and Audrey was now a Labour MP.
Jean Price, Labour. Majority of 507.
Ah, just scraped in. Here she was playing a Labour MP about 3 years before her actor colleague Glenda Jackson got elected as an MP in real life.
Godfrey Egan, Conservative, majority 14,010 and a standing ovation. How do you do it?
Played against type that she played women who were associated with the Conservatives, either officially or unofficially.
May I say, if you don't mind my mentioning it, what an extremely attractive outfit that is you have on.
Oh, thank you.
What a pity it's so totally inappropriate to the house. But then you represent a boiler-making constituency, do you, Mrs. Price?
There's quite a lot of, the feminist undercurrent to it, and she puts it across really well. and is very convincing as that sort of Labour MP from that time.
This is a trouser suit, not a boiler suit. And why do you ask, Mr. Egan? Do you represent a wig-making constituency?
Very good.
It's slightly forgotten now because it's not repeated endlessly. And I think that's possibly because it was made by Thames. And, you know, so when Thames lost the franchise, if Thames was still going, we'd probably get all of those sitcoms repeated on a loop.
Partly down to the lack of repeats of Thames TV sitcoms, the decade that Penelope Keith spent on ITV trying to break out of her comedy straitjacket rarely attracts the recognition her performances deserve. But her next move would be a startling return to the BBC for a sitcom with one of the most shocking opening episodes in TV history.
The premise is so bizarre. It's like something sort of out of a Tarantino picture, isn't it? You know?
Delivering unexpected moments. Extraordinary stories, sponsored by Prestige Flowers on Channel 5.
Watch in comfort. Simba Hybrid Mattresses. Sponsor My 5.
Delivering unexpected moments. Extraordinary stories, sponsored by Prestige Flowers on Channel 5.
"1995 saw Penelope Keith end her decade of ITV sitcoms and take up a new challenge. In the form of Maggie Prentice, one of the least sympathetic characters in the history of British sitcom, whose plans for early retirement are scuppered by family tragedy.
She went back to the BBC to do one final sitcom called Next of Kin, which has the most startling and upsetting premise for a sitcom.
I'm sorry to break the news to you, but it's about your son,
Graham,
and your daughter-in-law.
Bootface.
I'm afraid there's been an accident.
You find out that your next generation have been wiped out, leaving the 3 children orphaned. It's like something sort of out of a Tarantino picture, isn't it, you know?
And to think you were driving around France for a whole month, never knowing that your only son had been cut down in his prime.
Graham never had a prime. He wouldn't have recognised his prime if it had picked him up by his polyester lapels and head-butted him.
It was darker than many other sitcoms of that kind of time. And she was a very dark, rather cynical, rather tough, unsympathetic sort of character.
Do you know why I'm angry, Liz?
Yes. Because your son and his wife have been killed in a car crash.
I'm angry with myself because I don't feel anything.
It's a very contemporary idea. The grandparent who's bringing up the kids because their parents have died.
There are the children.
Oh, yes, of course. We'll go and see how they are tomorrow. Who's looking after them?
You'd like a drink? I'm having one.
And I think it's such an honest point of view because, like, often we're given this scenario that, like, you know, your grandparents will love you and, like, they love you because they can leave you and you're just there for visits.
You don't mean they're coming to stay?
Live.
Live? With us? Don't be ridiculous.
And I think that appealed to her. It gave her more depth, more darkness to play. But it was harder really to sell to an audience as a comedy.
All the sandwiches are vegetarian, wholemeal bread, completely tasters probably, but it's your day. What more do you want?
It's not my birthday for another 4 months.
What?
I think the reason that particular idea possibly didn't take off with Penelope playing that character is if she's unsympathetic right from the get-go, it's going to be harsh.
Well, why did you write in your diary that it was?
To see if she was reading it.
You set a trap for me.
And you fell into it.
That was a fairly despicable thing to do.
And so is reading somebody else's diary.
And also you have memories of Margot and all that sort of stuff coming into it.
Look, it's an awful shame to waste all this. Let's have some tea, shall we? Trifle, Georgia?
Next of Kin ran for 3 series, but never captured the public's imagination in the same way as Penelope had done in The Good Life and To the Manor Born. She did make a much-anticipated and well-received Christmas return to Grantley Manor in 2007.
You are an impossible man. But, as I said, there is nothing you could do I couldn't forgive.
Since the turn of the century, Penelope's dramatic work has been almost exclusively in the theatre.
The parts get better as you get older for someone like me. The more bags I get, the better the parts get, you see.
But a surprise recent twist has revealed a previously unexpected string to Penelope's bow as a warm and witty TV presenter.
It's 9:30 in the morning, and everyone seems to be drinking alcohol, mulled wine, beer. I don't drink either, but I suppose they need it if they're going to dance and carry those enormously heavy horns. This happens every year.
After years spent bringing other characters to life, feel-good travelogues like Penelope Keith's Hidden Villages have revealed a different side to her.
I don't think anyone really knows what they're doing. I mean, they know what they're doing, but why?
And viewers have been allowed a closer glimpse of the real Penelope.
Well, breakfast seems to have done the trick for the villagers, as they all soon take to the floor. I won't pretend that I fully understand the dance, but I, like everyone else, have enjoyed the display.
Penelope Keith, both in the parts she's played and how she comes across in interviews.
It's lovely to see you. Thank you. Keep warm.
There's just something admirable and trustworthy about her.
There's a certain overlap with some of the characters that she plays, in that she likes to do good works and play a role in the community and find ways to get things done.
Penelope spent 3 decades as president of the Actors Benevolent Fund, and her other charity projects have included helping homeless and vulnerable young people.
She's very socially aware of people's problems, and she has a great social conscience that you wouldn't expect people like Margot to have, necessarily.
Now in her 9th decade, Penelope appears less frequently in acting roles.
She's a home bird and likes to be at home, tending the flowers, watching the roses and growing new things in the greenhouse.
But many decades after the shows were made, TV repeats of her unforgettable classic roles like Margot see Penelope Keith's performances winning over new fans.
She's confident, she's sassy, and she's real.
2014 saw Penelope Keith join the ranks of theatrical dames, belatedly in the view of many.
But it was so lovely to come here to Windsor Castle, and on a day like this. Buckingham Palace is wonderful, but it's just terribly exciting. It's very intimate.
I suppose being a Maida Dame is kind of the ultimate sign from the establishment that you are a national treasure. And the next thing that happens is that Channel 5 makes a programme about you. I dare you.
She's a star, she's unusual, she has invented her own particular style, which is the definition of a star. And working with her is as much fun as watching her.